Welcome to Books to Business. I'm Eddie.
I'm Terrence.
What do we got this week, brother?
Today we have the 12-week year, a departure from annualized thinking.
It was an awesome one.
It's time to can the annual plan.
Yeah, a lot of focus on execution for us creative dreamer types that float around in the theoretical. This brings you right down to earth, which is cool. It's what I needed. I had
a conversation this morning with Brian Moran. He's the author of the 12-week year, how to get more done in 12 weeks than most people get done in 12 years. I've known Brian for a while, and he's agreed to do a private interview. And I was like, man, I think I would have been a lot better at doing the 12-week year now than I was when I first learned about the 12-week year.
Why is that?
I just take things more seriously. I understand that, first of all, I didn't have the knowledge I had. You know, even in the last 20, 25 weeks, the knowledge that these books give you is a plethora of tools that you can implement.
Yeah.
But there's no books in here about implementation for the most part. Maybe the one thing, not a lot though.
I just realized something.
What?
You know how you say the average CEO reads 52 books?
Yeah.
Well, your old self brought that average down.
Yeah.
It might have been 53.
0. I didn't read any books.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's right. The average CEO. Read like a CEO.
Read like a CEO, man. I loved, I'm just going to say right out in front, because I didn't really know what to expect. I knew there was going to be some practical application stuff here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think why I love this book is because it teaches the way that I like to teach and explain things. It like really resonated with me in the fact that it's like really conceptual. He talks about the why, and then he slowly transitions into the how. And it's like, okay, you understand now, let's build the thing. Which is really cool because you're hyped, you're all in, you see the value, you understand it, you feel good about yourself, and then he kind of lays out a map.
Yeah.
So that was sweet. I love that transition.
A lot of books are too much why, not enough how.
Right.
Yeah, they used to say in marketing, sell or give away the why and sell the how. Brian gives you both. He gives you an operating system to run any business plan. He says the 12-week year is the steady in anybody's life. It's a 12-week implementation program because you can't implement a concept and you can't implement an idea. You got to put it on paper. What I love about the 12-week year, what I remember from the original 12-week year was the term periodization is a European term for Olympic trainees. They used to isolate periods of time to isolate periods of the body. So they would only train on one part of the body for a period of time. They did it for 12 weeks, and they did it for the Olympics. So they had to get a lot done. So they'd isolate a part of the body for 12 weeks, and then they would repeat it. And they'd have ultra focus because one of the principles in the 12-week year is smaller periods, not annualized thinking, but also isolating fewer bigger goals rather than a lot of a lot of goals.
And there's a pain to that at first, which he talks about. Like it hurts sometimes to get into that level of detail and that clarity, and it hurts to measure it.
Right.
And he says like part of being successful is having the courage to define and measure.
Right.
Which I'm like, dude, that's right on, because it's like, people make a joke all the time. They're like, oh, after that weekend, I don't even want to look at my bank account. You know what I mean? Or it's like when you're measuring numbers or metrics, it's like, oh no, like, do I want to look? And when that becomes part of your routine, you can only improve what you measure. And that really resonated with me.
Yeah, and you can't talk about courage. A lot of people don't want to shine the lights on their bad results, or they don't want to shine the lights on things they said they would do, like in a New Year's resolution. Pretty typical. You start the year off with the best of intentions, and one of the challenges with a New Year's resolution or an annual plan is once you write it and you get excited about it, which you could very well do, and you don't perform to the number, 1/12 of the year is gone, and let's say you're not at 1/12 plan.
Yeah.
Then you just tag the underperformance in the other 11/12ths, and that vicious cycle repeats itself until you find yourself in September where you're supposed to have 9/12 of the plan done, and maybe you're at 3 or 4/12, right? course. What other number is better than that? And then you got to catch up. You got to play this big catch-up game with, and a lot of times that's when the plan stops because you can't make an adjustment. In the 12-week year,
Right.
Your year is 12 weeks. So you have 4 years, 4 year ends in a year.
Right.
And we always did really well with this. I implemented this in the early, well, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. I implemented this program in my agency, I think maybe even longer. And it was the basis of our planning process. So we'd have a year end 4 times a year. Whereas before we'd work all year. And in the insurance business, the biggest year was always December because people got to make their clubs and their awards and their contracts. And of course, you got to pay for Christmas. That dynamic happened 4 times per year with this system. Right?
Yeah. That's why you get some ludicrous clients in November, December because people have money to spend. They didn't plan it right. And it's like, whoa.
Yeah. People, it's unexplainable why so much business is done in the 12th month of the year in a lot of companies.
Yeah.
Because all their bonuses are tied to the annual plan.
Right.
And the annual plan typically ends at the end of December. So everyone's compensation is always leaned towards, hitting a number, an annual number. And that's why a lot of things are done, and a lot of ethical challenges happen here too.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, controllers and bookkeepers have to hit a number, and they do some creative accounting. Salespeople overzealous salespeople trying to hit bonus sometimes will sell. It's a challenge, and it's one of the problems. It's one of many problems with the annual planning process. It's too long-term thinking.
Yeah.
And certainly going anywhere past a year departs from any reasonable plan. I mean, what do you think about 3 years out? Right? It's why it's so hard to do, any type of plan. And 3 years out, it's hard to do anything but throw a number at it.
Yeah.
It's just a guess.
And you mentioned something important in there that I don't want to understate is adjust. Like success is adjusting.
Right.
Like it's really what it is. I mean, it's measuring, adjusting. And so, what this does is it gives you 4 little finish lines that you can look around you, assess where you are, and adjust.
Right. Yeah, the world stops at the end of the 12th week.
Right.
And then you reset. And the only purpose of a plan is to implement something. I mean, that's like the primary purpose of a plan, so we can implement something. You got to go from idea, which is in your head, to some kind of vision, which starts to appear in the mind's eye. Mm-hmm. Like, what does it look like, kind of? Like the visionary people are out there, and then at some point you gotta have someone drop it into a plan, and that almost always shows up in some kind of long 5-year plan broken down to all these longer plans. But in the 12-week year, what I like, Brian starts with the concept of a 3-year vision. Like take it from 3 years and then take that 3 up to 5, because we did this exercise today, which was kind of interesting. We'll share that in the workshop on Thursday. Our 12-week plan, which we implemented, right, Steve?
That's right.
Steve was in charge of the 12-week plan. He's the keeper of the plan.
The keeper of the plan.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm not trying to be rude here. I'm trying to get my screen to stay to not keep going black. So 1 second.
I hate that.
Oh, it's the worst. Okay, I got it. Yeah, so we did our own this afternoon, and it not only is it like you see the value, right? Because it's the first time I've really done that level of detail.
Really?
Yeah, I always have guidelines and I always have short-term goals, but I've never been that methodical, like down to the step.
Yeah.
But it's fun to do too. It's fun to like lay out it's almost like role playing your ideal world in 3 years. It's a fun exercise, and it's a productive exercise because and Steve talks about this all the time in his world. Visualization, it's an important thing because you have to become it before you're it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, vision always supersedes a plan, in my opinion.
Yep.
And supersede a word? Supersede before, right? And
Precede.
What's supersede mean?
Supersede is above.
I think
Look up supersede.
Yeah.
That would not be the last time or the first time I got it wrong. But vision always comes first. I mean, if you can't build it. I'm looking over your right shoulder, and I see the Guitar Hotel from the Hard Rock Casino, and it's so beautifully lit up right now. And someone had to see that in their eye. Like, let's make a guitar or a hotel out of a guitar. I mean, imagine visualizing that and telling an architect to put it together.
Yeah, no. Trust me, this is going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's a spectacle.
Yeah.
Especially if you're landing in Fort Lauderdale Airport, you see this giant hotel that's a guitar. It's a spectacle. But someone saw it in their mind's eye, I'm sure years ago, and then made it so, and they drew up the plans.
Yeah.
And that's what an architect does. So when you have a vision in your head of what you want to have, what you want to be, and what you want to do, it's called have, do, and be, right?
Yep.
I want to have this, to do that, to be this. And that's the exercise you go through in a visualization.
Supersedes a word. It's to take the place of. An example would be the older models have now been superseded.
Oh, I've used it wrong.
No, I think you used it right. You said as
A
preceded.
vision supersedes a plan.
Yeah, it comes
That's
before.
perfect.
Well, yeah.
Oh, it does?
Yeah.
If you're
Oh.
saying it's more important than a plan, actually,
Yeah.
no.
Comes
You meant to
before.
say precedes a
You
plan.
know we're going to get a comment from an English teacher or my English teacher. I think she watches.
Both, right?
I don't think so. I think I'm wrong. I'm okay. I have the courage to admit it.
But I don't think you are, though.
Take the place of supplant.
It could work.
Replace.
I don't think
It's synonymous with replace.
Yeah,
So that would-
it probably
so it
was
is
not
incorrect.
right. Yeah,
Right,
because I would say it precedes the vision's got to precede the plan.
Right.
And it's a way to work backwards from the result. It's like that giant domino almost in the metaphor of the domino. It's that one that's way, way out there you can't even conceive knocking over. You got to work backwards to the domino. Today in the 12-week plan are the first 12 dominoes. Really,
Yeah.
if you think about it. Right. If you want to get something started, there is a place to start. And we started our vision, things that we want to have. Right. We wanted to have certain things that we want to do with the things we have, and things that we want to become.
In the process.
Yeah, at the end. So we say, "Wow, that'd be kind of fun." We got really excited about it. I remember that. That was fun.
Yeah.
I haven't done a plan in a long time.
So it was cool. It's almost like the vision is the outline, and then the action is everything that fills it in.
Yeah. The old saying is, people don't plan to fail; they fail to plan. Right. And people still plan and fail. They just got to bring it into a 12-week plan.
Right.
Because in 12 weeks, if you're off course, you can have a reality check. You can schedule it with yourself. But in most cases, doing it with a peer is, I guess, 70% more.
Yeah,
more
the
effective.
accountability.
Yeah.
If you had to guess which quote I'm going to ask you to look up, what would it be?
Ants?
The James Clear's quote.
Oh, right.
I don't even want to guess. I'm close, but it's just so perfectly put.
Give me a couple words of it because I forget it too.
Basically, we fall to our processes.
Gotcha.
Oh, it's like the Aristotle quote. We become what we do repeatedly.
Yeah.
So life is not a...
We don't rise to our goals. We
You
fall,
fall to
to
the level of your systems.
that gives me chills.
James Clear. Say it clearly one more time.
Pun intended. We don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall.
Where'd it go? You fall to the level of your systems.
Meaning, like, it's almost like, so Brian talks about it in this book when he references two things. He goes, Phelps, people say he's great and he was great when he won the award. No, he was great all the time leading up to that. But here's the caveat. Every day was not amazing for Michael Phelps. Phelps had bad days. Phelps had days where he didn't want to. He had days where it would have been easier not to, but he had such strong systems in place and routines in place,
Right.
that you fall back to that. That's your ground level.
Yeah, it brings you in, particularly when you make a commitment. He makes a distinction between a commitment. Like, it's not a promise to someone else, it's a promise to yourself. Like, you're going to make a commitment to work your plan. Everything falls, from motivation to visualization to the 12-week, or to the annual plan broken down to the 12-week plan, broken all the way down to the couple goals, broken all the way down to the week.
Right.
And then you have then you have a process of keeping score, like things that we're doing. Like, we had things that we want to do next week, and we'll have he calls it a WHAM, right?
Yeah. I forget the acronym.
Weekly accountability meeting.
Boom.
WHAM. You got whacked in the WHAM. That's when you get fired in the weekly accountability meeting. Oof. That's a combo. But you end up.
I feel like you have some battle stories.
Oh my my God.
He's like, that'll keep you up for 2 weeks.
The weekend whacked in the wham. Well, some people would write these plans down. I mean, this is the problem. You know, I hired him for big money. I mean, he's a high end. He's a New York Times bestseller. So I hired him for big money at the time. I remember it was a lot. And he came in, and we had, 100 people there that wanted to go through the 12-week year workshop, which is fantastic. And a lot of people, we did it as an agency, but we had everyone else do it for their little companies too, because everybody has their own practice. Like, you don't have to do it. Like, you could very well have a 12-week plan for your own physical goals and your own personal achievement too. It's an operating system for any outcome.
Not only you could, you probably should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what happens is you are what you repeatedly do, and excellence comes from a habit, and the habit of planning in this level, the 12-week year makes you deliberately rewrite your plan every 12 weeks rather than once per year.
Yeah.
Like, we used to go away for a whole week, like 3 days, and just write our plan. I remember that. It wasn't a whole week. It was probably 2 full nights. So we spent 3 days, and by the end of it, you're so wiped out. And what the first thing I remember is when we rewrote the plans to 12 weeks, the planning process was shortened. It didn't take as long because we kind of knew where we had to make the adjustments.
Right.
We didn't have to scrap it and rewrite it. Because what happens usually in January, usually happens in November, you stunk in a year, so you're already planning on rewriting your plan.
So what was that backtracking like? Was it like habitual levels, or was it? I guess it's just pivoting in different ways, right? But
it's the same process, but you do it 4 times instead of once. But the framework for the annual plan is in place. Like, the idea is, like, if you want to have a good year, like, let's say you want to go up 20% on an annual basis, which is a good growth year, because call inflation at 3.
Okay.
So if you grow your company at 20%, you're outpacing, inflation. You're outpacing, as an investor, if a company's growing by 20%, a good acceptable investment right now would be 2 or 3%, maybe 5, right? So if you're growing at 20, that's a big deal. And a lot of people say, I want to grow at 20%, and they put this plan together, and they put the systems in place that on paper look like it'll work. Mm-hmm. And then you get complacent about implementation because you have this long year. Like, you can hide for 2 months in a 12-month plan. You can hide. And then you could be in, like, the 3rd month before you can start to see something ugly appearing. It's like, oh my God, I think this year sucks, and I don't really. Right. And now you're starting to tell stories about it, right? In the absence of data, to Brene Brown's last book, right? We invented these stories. And the companies, or in my case, the company would say, how's your year going? We'd always have some kind of story to attach to why the plan's not working yet. This person's sick, this person left, this law changed. It was always this big dance, right? As opposed to being behind in a month. If you're behind in a month and there's only 3 months in your year, right? It's 3 months in a 12-week year. The year's almost over, and the story is compacted, so you got to really respond.
It's like walking around with the big spotlight.
Yeah,
you can't miss it.
Think about training for a TED Talk, right?
Yeah.
Didn't you want to do another one?
Yeah. And I'll approach it differently.
But it could take a long time to plan. I know someone that did one without rehearsing.
That defeats the entire purpose. Yeah. It's such a privilege to do it in a career mover.
Yeah, it wasn't there was a lot of weaknesses in there. Of course, if you have a bunch of time to do it, you can kill it.
I had a board where I'd checked off. I wanted to do 100 reps before I got on stage.
Right.
And I still look at it now, and I'm like, duh, I think that's why I'm doing another one. But
But if you had to do one in a year on a totally different topic, you can kind of look at, what would it take to get 1 million views on a TED. That'd be your vision, getting 1 million views, touching a lot of people.
Right.
Moving, what do you call it? Putting a dent in the world. That's
right.
to your thing.
I love that.
If you work backwards from that as a visualization to today, there's 12 weeks. What do you got to do over the next 12 weeks to get ready to be able to share that 18 minutes with the world?
Right. Edit, cut, right, edit, cut, right, edit, cut.
Yeah, then you also got to get you got to get the event too. You got to apply for the event. There's a lot of tactics that are involved in that happening. By the way, I'm almost sure that if we made that a priority and visualize it, I'm almost sure we can get you on a TED stage somewhere, working backwards with a great message. But if you'd start now and you'd have it tight.
For sure.
That's just something cool.
Agreed. And he talks about, I mean, it's not all business. Like, he talks about the personal level. There's actually a lot of tie-in between the James Clears and the Charles Duhiggs of the world and some of the stuff he talks about, you know, with like your personal environment and, you know, removing distraction. And, you know, there's some real tangible stuff there in terms of putting yourself in a position to win. Because that's really what he says. You know, he talks about, and this ties right into my videos and my neck of the woods, when he's talking about never being a victim, like just owning your life and the world around you. That means being responsible for your environment. That means being responsible for your results. It means being the one with the keys, not the one making excuses. And that, you know, when I talk about like that piece being so important, because it gives the reader like a real sense of understanding, you know, one, how much power they have, and two, you know, why this 12-week plan is valuable. Otherwise, it's like, okay, you know, this is an implementation system, so what? Right. You know, but you really get the value, like you understand it.
Well, I think in absence of a good plan, there is a predisposition to go to the to-do list, and things kind of get on your list as the year goes. And I know this because there's things that happen, right? The market conditions change, and then you're adding things to the to-do list. And if you're not structured, and the world gets away from you, you're going to start pecking away at your to-do list, and your plan's going to suffer.
Yeah, you're herding cats.
Yeah, exactly. And your one and only day is getting absorbed by whatever you seem to get to versus, you know, in a good time structured 12-week plan. When you have extra time, you don't go to the to-do list, you go to the plan.
Yeah.
And you pluck from the plan. You can pull things from future weeks that are in there. Because you peck out the 12 weeks, right? First of all, you peck out the 3-year vision, then you go down to the goal, right? And then you pick 3 goals over 12 weeks, and then you do 1/12 of it each week. So you got 12 one-week plans.
Yeah.
So it's not a perfect 12-week plan. It's 12 perfect 1-week plans. That's kind of how the program works. Because you can make adjustments on missing something in 1/12.
Right. And the worksheet we use kind of helped.
Oh yeah, it's great.
Help with that too. So as a relatively new business, I mean, we're what, 7-8 months now. This podcast and our business has been together 6 full months. Wow, that's amazing. You know, I can definitely see how we're going to use this, and it also like ties into the idea of, what does he call it? The emotional.
What was it called?
Cycle of
EOC,
change.
Cycle of
emotional
change.
cycle of change.
As we were filling it out, we were talking about, you know, where we are in that cycle. You know, it's an interesting thing.
Well, when you're putting something together, right, you have this uninformed optimism, he says, is phase 1. That's where you think things are really better than they really are.
Yep.
And you don't anticipate all the things that could go wrong with a good idea.
Right.
Like, just go on Shark Tank for 10 minutes. I saw a guy that brought a pizza oven on there the other day, and he did this little skit, and he nailed it. And then he came out of character, and they destroyed him. He wasn't ready for it, so I'm sure he had all this optimism going on Shark Tank, and he left, yeah. Oh, so that's uninformed optimism, and you go and you're all excited, and then you hit phase 2, which is, I think it's called informed
Pessimism.
Informed pessimism.
That's when reality strikes in.
Right.
That's when, you know, it's like leaving your job because you're going to be this amazing entrepreneur and make all this money and it's awesome, and then a month later you're in your shorts in an apartment sitting there looking at your bank account.
Your shorts. That's even worse than doing bad. You got to be in your shorts.
I mean,
yeah, you're eating.
I don't know why I said that.
You're taking your left shots. I mean, you're taking the shots to the head.
You're realizing
you're taking it, yeah. And people get this all the time when we recruit them to become financial planners. You know, it sounds like I'm going to be a Wall Street stockbroker. I mean, everyone's seen the movies, and then you end up, getting hung up on, and people, you come from a world where you're respected, and now you're getting your teeth kicked in.
Right.
People think you're trying to take advantage of them. Like, oh my God, this is horrible. And that's an interesting dynamic when you go from one to the other. Whoever doesn't quit has a bigger journey ahead of them, because the third phase of this cycle.
The valley of despair.
Ooh.
That's, you know what? As dark as it is, that's my favorite. It just has the most oomph. But that's when most people quit. That's when it's just, all you can think about is what's going wrong, and you lose sight of what can go right. You lose sight of the upside.
Then that is when you lose a lot of people. I'm sure that's when you lose them in anything, like in the Navy SEALs. You talk about buds. They have that hell week where everybody leaves. It's got to be their valley of despair, right? They lose like half.
Yeah.
Those that were there, they all show up and get qualified to be Navy SEALs, and they make it through the first part. But now they're starting to get beat up. They're starting to realize they're not superhumans because they'll beat it. They'll beat the human out of you, and they'll get you in the valley. And they want to see who has the guts. And if you're an entrepreneur, this is the journey. Like, this is when, the tough really enjoy it. They really say, oh, this will be the story that you get to tell everybody. You can tell your grandkids this.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what it's all about. Why?
Yeah. And then you cross the chasm over to informed optimism, right? You had fact-based reason. A fact-based reason is be happy and celebrate.
So this is your coming. If you think of it like an upside-down bell curve, right? So the very bottom is the valley of despair.
Right.
And then you start kind of coming up again. And that's the informed optimism. And so what do you think an example of that would be? Let's say in the financial planning world.
Oh, I mean, that's an easy one. I can give you, it depends. If you're, this guy works with a lot of financial planners. That's where we met. But he works with everybody. I talked to him this morning. He's all kinds of corporate deals because his idea works anywhere. But if you wanted to open up a new office, let's say, and you have all this optimism and you want to go into let's say you want to go into a small market. Here's a good example. Let's say you want to just move. So I want to move to Florida. I'm going to move to Florida and I'm going to start another business down here. It's warmer. There's not cold. There's a lot of old people. They need planning. A lot of commuters. It all sounds good on paper. You sell your house. You sell your practice. You move down here. You get a great office, you set it up, you get a new assistant, nice lights, you can see the beach, you can go for a walk, you live on a golf course, and then nobody calls you. All right, nothing happens. It's like no one knows you, you have no credibility, it's not transferable, and all of a sudden, you're gone from being hero to literally zero, and no one knows you. So that's like going from uninformed optimism, it looks good on paper, to the reality is you're a stranger to them, right? And you need to go through the process just like you did 20 years ago. Maybe you get there a little quicker, and then then getting through the valley of despair is like, did I make the wrong decision? Maybe I should have just stayed up there and taken a few weeks off a year until you break through. The good ones will break through. It's an interesting example, but
the leads start trickling in.
Yeah.
And you start saying, okay, I can do this.
Go back to the fundamentals. You typically dust off your planning book, go back to the fundamentals, and execute the things that you were taught.
Yeah.
Because one of the things about most businesses, because this reminds me a little bit of the concept of temporal discounting, right? And temporal discounting means if you save, the example being is if you save $30 a month for 50 years, you'll have $1 million. So you see the $30 a month is a very small number compared to the $1 million in 50 years, right? Mm-hmm. But today, the $30 to someone might seem much bigger. So what the current cost of getting that result seems bigger than it really is, and the future benefit seems smaller than it really is. And as you start traveling through, it starts becoming more realistic. And then after a while, it's nothing. The benefit seems real, and you're making your way to it. It's momentum.
Gotcha.
It's called temporal discounting. And you see that a lot with saving.
Yeah. What's another way? Is it first rate thinking, first something thinking? First order thinking?
That one?
Is there a tie in there where like you're I mean, I get that they're different, but they're also similar in the sense that like it's like the brownie. Your first order thinking is, oh my God, it tastes good, I want it. And that's all you can see in the moment. When the second order thinking would be like, yeah, but it's not good for me. It doesn't meet my goal.
Right. That's interesting. Very similar, I guess.
Maybe a strat, I guess.
No, I know what you're thinking. Because you get the reward for the brownie.
Yeah.
I know, like in compounding, and this is a business book, obviously, because 12-week year is about growing a business, and when you put a dollar away, that'll earn the biggest amount of reward to you than any dollar you put thereafter, because it's in there the longest. Right. It's like effort that you do. We were talking to Steve today about, overworking at something for a year or two and being underpaid. Like, that's what happens when you start a business. Like, some businesses, you don't take any money out. And then you've done the right thing so that you can be overpaid while you underwork.
For the rest of your life.
Forever. Yeah. Right. And that's what the 12-week year will do for you. Doing the plan, and going through this process of uninformed optimism, getting your teeth kicked in, trudging across the valley of despair, not leaving and quitting, and rising up.
Or as Ben Franklin would say, taking care of the minutes so the years take care of themselves.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah.
I think my favorite part of the book might be that when we talked about Phelps, it reminded me of it when greatness is not achieved when you achieve something great. It's in the time spent working towards that event. So a lot of people think you win the medal and now he's great. But it was all through the valley of despair that he was becoming great, and that's when the greatness was actually being achieved, was during those times. That was really impactful.
It's hard hitting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. The 10,000 hour rule. People see the guy on the podium, not what they went through.
Yeah.
And that's the same for a business. Same for a solopreneur, same for an athlete, same for someone in school, going through anything.
Well, he breaks it down pretty simple in this book. This book's a quick read. It's 4 hours. I mean, it's a little over 4 hours. There's actual worksheets in the book. There's 3 principles, five disciplines in one cycle. Like, the principles are accountability. He has commitment, and then he's got the greatness in the moment. Right, which you explained to me. So you got accountability. You got a way to keep score and make and be courageous about your results. And then commitment is promises you make to yourself and your team. And then what's greatness in the moment?
Greatness in the moment is executing in the now, understanding that right now, like the work you put in, it's almost like what we've been talking about. Mm-hmm. The work you put in now will ultimately come to shape what you get down the road. Yeah. So it literally is the Ben Franklin quote: "Take care of the minutes and the years take care of themselves." Right.
Man, I love that. We're interviewing him in a couple of days. I want to specifically
Ben Franklin?
ask. No,
He's next week.
We're interviewing his ghost. No, I want to talk to him about greatness in the moment. It's kind of a cool concept. And the 5 principles, or the 5 disciplines, are vision, make a plan, process controls, measurement, and time use. So these are all outlined in the system. When you get the book, which is what, $15, $20, you have a planning system, a planning process. You can use this as a tool and a guide. And then the simple cycle is you keep score, you plan, and then you account. Then you count everything up and you re-rack it.
Yeah.
It's a simple system to execute anything.
It's simple as that. Yeah.
Simple.
And if someone asked me to explain it in a sentence or two, like if they're like, Eddie, give me the one takeaway, it's like when you don't set clear goals or when your length of time is too long, you lose the ability to be aware of what you're doing, to analyze it and make changes. So you have to shorten your deadlines to give yourself clarity.
Yeah.
That's kind of the gist.
There's another thing to the fact that you write a plan. Like, we did this as a team. 3 of us sat down, and the first thing we did was the vision exercise. And the first thing we wanted to do after that is throw numbers on the board. Like, oh, let's be this, let's be that, add a 0, to the income, add a 0 to the viewers. And instead of saying, no, what is it, what are we going to have, what are we going to do, what are we going to be? And that produced a feeling. We were excited about it, right? And the fact that we did it together, here's my point, is you're way more likely to be successful if you do something. You go through this journey with somebody else, through this four-part cycle of change, through this planning process. You'd have a partner to do the accountability meetings. And there's an article called, it was written by Fast Company, and Brian referenced it in his book. I looked it up and read it. It's about an article written about change or die. It was written about transplant patients that had a hard time, heart transplant patients that had a hard time changing their habits that produced, the unhealthy life that gave them their heart failure. and 70% of them in a peer environment changing their habits together succeeded. Whereas if they do it on their own, most relapsed into the bad behavior. So having a peer to do it, all studies point to doing that with a peer, like an accountability buddy.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that at least briefly, because he says we look at accountability wrong. You know, accountability is not discipline or consequence. How did he define it? Accountability is...
Let's go for that. Accountability versus consequences.
Yeah, like, because most people in corporate settings, particularly, like if there's a culture of, you know, where those whams or when people meet together to go over their measurements, if they're nervous or they're scared or they think it's going to be like complete, like, you know, a slap on the wrist, it's different. It's an opportunity to measure and readjust as a team. It's like a necessity, not a punishment.
You can't impose accountability on someone. They always say, let's have an accountability meeting. You know, everybody, we're in a free world as far as I know, and everything comes down to a choice. You know, you don't have to do anything. You choose to do it. And if you choose to do something that the company is paying you to do, you're going to get a consequence.
Right.
Right. So it's not, you know, that was his take on accountability versus, what do you call it? Consequences.
Yeah.
So choose to versus have to. Like, you have to do this. And it's nice as an employer or a business owner when you finally say, you can do whatever you want. I'm paying you for this result. You can choose not to do the activities to produce that result. And if you do so, there'll be consequences vis-a-vis you're not being paid, or you'll be, you know, part ways, which is okay.
Yeah.
You know, it's perfectly fine to part ways with somebody.
For sure.
Yeah. When you structure, I mean, we haven't read a book on compensation yet, but there's some good books on compensation, incenting people. There was a little bit in Poor Charlie's Almanac on it, on incentive-based bias.
I think I only did the cognitive biases.
Yeah, it was in there a little bit, but there's a lot to do with accountability, alignment of compensation, alignment of goals, all of which could be tied into a 12-week plan for a team.
Another thing I wrote down in my notes was that I don't think we touched on yet was doing this plan. You say you have this lofty goal that you want to set. He mentions that when you write it out and you actually write down to the day what you have to do to get it done, you can see if the cost is worth that commitment. Because a lot of people, you make a commitment to these things, but you don't even really understand what the cost is going to be. And if you write it out, the plan, see what you have to do day in, day out, how much you have to spend of your life and what it'll take. You'd be like, this is not worth it for the goal. So I thought that was really cool too, because if you don't define it, you're never going to bring it all the way back to the moment.
And we had an interesting dialogue about a similar topic today.
Yeah.
You know, building something to get a benefit versus getting an instant benefit out of something you do along the way, right? Like building a big, like this is a long play. This particular business strategy is a long play in business. And there's periphery opportunities and things that come from it. Our biggest opportunity and benefit is from the wisdom that we get from the books. So I've used this wisdom. In fact, we reapplied this very book. We wrote a 12-week plan today, which I think will 200,000x our investment on this book. But you know, it's the analogy of, is it better to go right into starting a business out of high school or going to college and paying the money? Because
I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. You got to weigh out what's best for you.
Depends, right? You know, you got costs, right? You got the cost of college. All right, let's say you didn't go to college. You take whatever college costs and you apply a opportunity cost recovery on that. Let's say it's 6%. So you, instead of spending $250,000 on college, you drop it at 6% into something. And then you also go to work right away and you earn that money. So maybe there's some form of crossover. That's a calculation, is my point. And that's a great point, Steve. Like, everything costs money. Okay, whether or not it's a good deal. I mean, that's not money. It's life and time. But if you're measuring money, if you're earning money, there is also a lost opportunity cost of something you can do better with that time that could get you a better result.
Yeah.
And that's the measurement that has to happen
Before you make that decision.
Right.
And the follow-up being, if it's no, I think we talked about this a little while ago, say no.
Right.
That's much, you know, if you're looking long term, people respect that more. People understand that more than doing, as you say, the dirty yes.
The dirty yes. That was fantastic. Brene from last week. The dirty yes. It's like, yeah, you're really saying yes, but really what you're saying is F no.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just nodding to you to get rid of you. That's a dirty yes.
I know a handful of dirty yesers.
Oh my God, there's a million of them. Yeah, that's a whole nother dialogue. But
yeah.
What do we have for questions? We get any?
Sure.
Maybe before you read them, do you mind? I can't see the number from here. Otherwise, I would just read it. But just shouting out the cell phone number for people to text.
Oh, sure thing.
Thanks, man.
Let me pull that up. The number, if you want to text in, is 754-273-6069. And we're really active on Instagram, all four of us. So the podcast page or all three of our personal Instagram.
It was like four.
There's 3 or 4 of us around here. What was the out of the book? Was there any part of the planning process that you struggle with most?
Oh, that's a good one.
Usually for me, it's the detail. It's like, you know, it's like sticking out. You know, he talks about blocking off your time. You know, my struggle is blocking off my day, and then things come that feel urgent, and like whether they truly are or not. You know, maybe that's TBD. Maybe it comes through in a maturation process. I don't know. But like, you know, I'll have time set aside to create, and I'll get an email or a text, and I'll be like, oh man, like I feel like this needs attention now. And so that to me is, I guess that's more the execution than the plan. But that's been my challenge.
That reminds me of something that really stuck out to me in this book. It didn't just change my perspective. It like flipped it 180 degrees, which I've heard before. Remind me of the compound effect. He says planning, because I think of planning, like writing these things down, it feels like another task. And he says planning doesn't waste time. It actually saves you time. Of course, because it like in the future, but it, like, when you hear that, you're like, of course it does. But when you're going to do that action, it feels like you're taking away from what you're doing. But if you remember it's saving you time over time, that's huge.
Yeah, definitely. It's an investment.
Also, I've had issues with the planning process where the front part of the plan wasn't well thought out. Like we did a really good job today, visualizing what a good outcome would be. Like,
would you call that the back end or the front end?
Well, it's the front end because it should drive all the weekly plans down to the day. You should be able to look at what you want to do in a picture without any words in your mind's eye. That's what visualization is. It should be. We were starting to write numbers down, and we got too tied up in a number. You get more emotionally attached to the picture. It imprints in your brain. And when I've made mistakes in the planning process before, I was chasing somebody else's number instead of a purpose-driven visualization of what my life should look like, what I want to be: happy, healthy, successful, free. Like those were all the types of words that were in our vision statement.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people poo-poo vision. They're like, it's too fluffy.
And then just hope the arrow finds magically the target that they want.
Well, think about it. If you have 50 people in a room, you know, not everyone's going to be the secret, you know, and talking about, you know, manifesting things. And, you know, some people want to get right to it and say, you know, what's the number divided by 12 and how many people got to do it, and to be assigning tasks before there's a powerful undercurrent of purpose embedded in it.
Yeah, I think an easy way to, at least is how I communicate it in my own head. It's like, because you tend to associate vision with fluff, like, right? But like vision and what you believe, how you identify yourself directly correlates to the action you take, which directly manifests into your reality. So if you don't visualize something, you're shooting free throws with your eyes closed.
Right.
But it's scientific. It's not just, you know, it's not magic.
Well, then when you're in the valley of despair or in the pessimistic stage, if you don't have a powerful vision that you can reflect on, or have a team member put that picture of that life you want to be in, you know, with your family and the things that mean a lot to you, you'll quit.
Yeah.
And you got to be attached to that. That's the whole reason a lot of people are unhappy at work. That they're working someone else's vision, or they're just mindlessly wandering through life without a real direction. And this book is a tool to connect your vision to tactical actions 4 times a year. to do it and live it every day and every week.
Yeah, 2 thumbs up for me. I really enjoy it.
I love it. Yeah, he's always good. Looking forward to her. He's only up the street. He's stuck in West Palm Beach.
Oh, yeah?
Well, he's from Michigan, but he's in West Palm Beach with his family.
It's a good place to be stuck if you're from Michigan.
Yeah,
it's
right.
not a bad deal.
Yeah.
Cool. Is that it for the week, Steve?
Yep.
We don't have next week's book, but I know what it is. I'm super excited about it.
Me too.
Perfect timing.
Locked and loaded on Audible.
Have you started it yet?
I haven't.
Do you want to introduce the book?
Sure. It's by Viktor Frankl, and it's called Man's Search for Meaning. And this has been suggested by quite a few people, believe it or not. Eerily, within the same day, we got 3 of them. So
Yeah.
we're going for it.
Yeah, I
I'm
got
really
connected
excited.
to his grandson, who's a documentarist. Documentarist? What's the correct word?
Let's do it.
Is
Let's
that
go
what-
with it.
Let's go filmmaker.
Oh, he's a filmmaker.
Yeah.
There's
You know?
2 words. I continue to support.
It's a word. Documentarist.
My mother said I should have paid better attention. Yeah, documentary. And he wrote a documentary, Victor and I. And I was connected with him on Facebook because I put out there, we're looking at this book, and I got a friend of mine says, I know this guy. You should connect with him.
See if we can grab him for an interview.
Trying to get him. And if you're interested in suggesting a book, we're getting tons of suggestions. And that one came up through the avenues. Awesome.
All right. Well, until Thursday, workshop.
Join us Thursday night at 8 o'clock and every Thursday night for a live workshop.
Later.
Take care.